Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Parker Loves Sports YouTube channel. I am your host, Parker. Thank you for taking a few minutes to spend your day with me. Today, I'm going over my Avalanche offseason plan and prediction video. So I just want to warn you guys in advance that this is what I would do if I was in Joe Sakic's seat at the GM table and making re-signings and signing players and all that good stuff. This is what I would do. So, of course, obviously, Joe Sakic, one of the best GMs in the entire NHL. So, of course, he is going to have probably a better plan than me. But I'm just giving my thoughts and what I would do in this situation. Now, keep in mind, I'm no GM, like I said, so I'm not going to be able to navigate the salary cap well because NFL GMs, they're so just great at being able to say, hey, we're going to backload this contract so we can free up cap space at the front and whatnot. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm just going to be going over players that I think we should re-sign, a player that we should sign in free agency, because I think a majority of our moves will become or are going to be re-signings from the team. And then we'll go over a mock draft as well. So that is the plan. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like, and let's jump in to this offseason prediction. As always, I want to remind you that Jesus is King. I pray that you give your life to him. He's got a plan and a purpose for you. And I just truly hope that you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior and believe with your whole heart that he died on the cross for your sins. And if you do, you'll go to heaven. It's that simple and that easy. Now, of course, the choice is up to you. And I hope you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And as a Christian, I feel it's important to share this message. So that's why I share it at the top of every video. Now, let's jump in to the free agency. So, looking at our major free agents, you can see that we have Andrei Burakovsky, Nazem Kadri, Darcy, Kuemper, Josh Manson, Valeri, Nichushkin, Artturi, Lehkonen, Ryan Murray, Nicolas, Aube-Kubel, Andrew Cogliano, Darren, Helm, Jack Johnson, and Nico, Sturm, all as the major free agents. And, of course, there'll be other minor free agents that need new contracts, such as a Jacob McDonald, for example. But then you also have to look at the 2023 free agents and keep cap space room for them next year. For example, MacKinnon needs an extension. Bowen Byram needs an extension. Alex Newhook needs an extension, just to name a few. So we got to keep in mind that. Like I said at the top of the video, I'm not keeping in mind cap space, but I'm just letting you guys know that you have to keep cap space for them. So if the Avalanche don't do anything super crazy in free agency, that's why, because some important players also need extensions next offseason. Now, jumping into the free agency, Andrei Burakovsky, unfortunately, I am going to have to let walk. I think that he's going to be too expensive for us to retain him. Let me rephrase this. I think we can retain him, but if we do, we're going to lose a couple more pieces. Andrei Burakovsky had a career year in 80 games, scoring 22 goals, 39 assists for 61 points. He was a 12 on the plus minus and had 18 penalty minutes. And as much as I love to bring back Andrei Burakovsky, I unfortunately am going to have to let him walk due to, as I said before, him being a little too expensive. So we could keep Andrei Burakovsky, or in my opinion, we could keep another player and then a couple more cheaper players. So, it's kind of a toss-up. As much as I like Burakovsky to come back, I think his price tag will be a little bit too expensive. Nazem Kadri, unfortunately, I am going to have walking. I just don't think we're going to have enough cap space. I think his deal is going to be upwards of $10 million this season. And with us only having $26 million, that would be a big chunk of our cap already. So, to me, as much as I think Kadri deserves to be paid, I just don't see it being with the Avalanche, with us having so many free agents coming up this offseason. But he had a great year. In 71 games played, he had 28 goals, 59 assists for 87 points, was a 13 on the plus minus, did take 71 penalty minutes, but Kadri absolutely proved his worth, as he is a solid second line center, maybe the best. I'm not going to say the best, but one of the best second line centers in the entire National Hockey League. I wish Kadri the best. I hope he can come back, but I think that he's most likely going to be gone just due to the fact that, we got a lot of free agents coming up. Next up is Darcy Kuemper, and I'm having us re-signing the Kuemper. In 57 games played, and started. He has 37 wins, 12 losses, 4 overtime losses. He faced 1,754 shots and allowed 138 goals. And so that means he made 1,616 saves. He had a 921 save percentage and a 254 goals against average with 5 shutouts on the year. Now, you don't want to lose your goaltender in back-to-back seasons, obviously, with us losing Grubauer last offseason. I think Darcy Kuemper staying on the team is going to be a necessity. He played really solid in the second half of the season. I think a big part of him struggling in the playoffs was due to that eye injury. And like he said a little bit ago, I can't remember how many days ago, but he went to an eye therapist 3 times a day or something like that to retrain his eye to see, because he was having trouble seeing after that injury. So that's a big part of why I think he struggled a little bit in the playoffs. But I absolutely think Kuemper should re-sign. I wouldn't hate Justus Annunen and Pavel Francouz being the goaltender tandem. However, I would feel confident, much more confident, with Darcy Kuemper being the starter and Francouz being the backup. Next up, Josh Manson. I have us re-signing Manson. Of course, when you look at RD, you think of obviously Cale Makar, Devon Toews, but then also you got Bowen Byram. You got Eric Johnson, who's got 1 year left on his deal, and that could be his last year playing hockey. He could retire soon. Then you look at Josh Manson was an excellent acquisition by Joe Sakic at the deadline. He's not really known as an offensive defenseman, but when he came to Colorado, when he started to get into the system and start to learn and just how to jump up into plays and contribute offensively, he really kind of took his offensive level up a notch. Of course, he's not a Cale Makar, he's not a Devon Toews, he's not a Bowen Byram, but he has solid offensive upside while being a very, very solid option on the defensive side of the puck as well. So I think Josh Manson he should be a priority to come back this offseason. If I were to prioritize free agents, I mean, it's tough. I'd say Nichushkin's first. You got Lehkonen, who I'd make second, because obviously he's an RFA and he really contributed in the playoffs. Then you got, Manson and Kuemper. I would prioritize Josh Manson up there, is in one of the players you need to bring back. And in 67 games played with both us and the Anaheim Ducks, Manson scored 6 goals, 10 assists for 16 points. He was a negative 11 on the plus-minus, and he had 65 penalty minutes. Next up, I just talked about him, Valeri Nichushkin. We definitely need to re-sign Nichushkin. In 62 games played, he had 25 goals, 27 assists for 52 points, was a 12 on the plus-minus, and only took 14 penalty minutes. Nichushkin he took a big step this year. Of course, when he was with Dallas at the start of his career, he struggled, went to play in the KHL. Dallas bought out his contract, I believe. Then he signed with us, and he has been improving every single season. I know a lot of people at the start of the year didn't like him being on the second line, but he proved that he absolutely deserves to be a top 6 forward on this team. And so to me, he absolutely deserves the money he's going to get. And Valeri Nichushkin should be the top priority for the Avalanche this offseason in extending him. Next up, we have Artturi Lehkonen. I have us re-signing him. Now, the nice thing about Artturi Lehkonen is he's an RFA, a restricted free agent. So if a team offer sheets him, we have the ability to match that offer sheet and re-sign him, which I think Joe Sakic was going to do, because when he talked about the trade for Artturi Lehkonen, he said they weren't going to give up Justin Barron and all those assets that we gave to Montreal for a rental player. They wanted team control, and I do think Artturi Lehkonen will be signed to a long-term deal. I would guess somewhere between 4, 5, 6-ish years if I were to re-sign him. But yeah, Artturi Lehkonen is definitely one of my top priorities if I was the GM this offseason. So yeah, Artturi Lehkonen to me, it should be a top priority, and it's nice for him to be a restricted free agent. So if he does get offered, we can match it and re-sign him. So that is a big, big plus. And in 74 games played with us and the Canadiens, he scored 19 goals, 19 assists for 38 points, was a 1 on the plus-minus, and took 22 penalty minutes. Next up, Ryan Murray. This is an easy walk. We signed him as a veteran defenseman, and I really think that we signed him this offseason to play that role that Josh Manson played. However, he really just couldn't stay healthy. He only played in 37 games, didn't get a goal, only 4 assists, was a -3 on the plus minus, and took 2 penalty minutes. Now, he was more of a defensive defenseman, so the offensive numbers I wasn't expecting to be crazy, but just the fact that he took a lot of it, or he was injured a lot of the season, to me, I think we got to let him go, especially with our decor right now. Makar, Toews, Byram, Eric Johnson. We'll see who the bottom 2 pairing is, whether we have a Jacob McDonald or someone like that. But yeah, to me, I think Ryan Murray is kind of an obvious one in letting him walk this offseason. Next up is Nicolas Aube-Kubel. He is also a restricted free agent, and I have us re-signing him maybe to a shorter term deal, maybe 1 to 2 years, worth 1 to 1.25 million per season. I think he's a solid bottom 6 forward for us. He provided some scoring, does take some penalties that you'd like him to clean up on, but to me, a very solid bottom 6 forward who he claimed off of the waivers from the Philadelphia Flyers, and someone who I would like to see the Avalanche bring back. In 74 games with us and the Flyers, he scored 11 goals, 12 assists for 23 points, was 11 on the plus minus, and took 47 penalty minutes. Andrew Cogliano, I have us letting him walk. Cogliano was a very solid veteran presence for us this offseason. A bigger physical guy, as you need physicality in the playoffs, which is the main reason we acquired him for a 5th round pick. However, he is getting up there in age, and I don't know if we want to keep him. We might keep him for that veteran experience. We'll have to see what Joe does, but to me, I have Cogliano walking just due to the fact that he's a little bit older in age, and I feel like we might want to get some of our younger prospects, such as Oscar Olesen, Martin Count, Sampo Ranta, one of those few guys up at the NHL level. But this season with us and the Sharks, he played in 74 games, scored four goals, 12 assists for 16 points, was a -18 on the plus minus, and only took 20 penalty minutes. To me, he was more of a kind of a defensive forward, not really having crazy scoring numbers, but in the end, I do have Cogliano walking in free agency. Darren Helm, I have us letting Darren Helm walk. Same thing with Cogliano, he's getting up there in age, and Helm could potentially retire this offseason. I don't know if he will. Was a big part in helping us get this championship, obviously scoring the game-winning goal with 4.6 seconds left against St. Louis to have us advance to the Western Conference Finals. But yeah, I think Darren Helm, unfortunately, we're going to let walk. Just going to try and get younger. You got the veteran leadership with obviously the guys who just won the cup, Landeskog, MacKinnon, Rantanen. You got those veteran leaders, and Helm definitely helped us win the cup. He was a big part of our cup run. However, I just have us letting him walk in free agency. And in 68 games played, he scored 7 goals, 8 assists for 15 points, was a -5 on the plus minus, and took 14 penalty minutes. Jack Johnson, I also have us letting him walk. Another veteran who's getting up there in age, got his cup, but I do have us moving on from Jack Johnson. Although it's tough because we shipped off a lot of our defensive prospect. Drew Helleson to Anaheim for Josh Manson, Justin Barron to Montreal for Artturi Lehkonen. The real only one we have left is Sean Barons, so we'll have to see how we plug up the other defensemen, but we'll get to that. I have my line projections upcoming here in just a second. And in 74 games played, he scored 1 goal, which was the first goal of the season for the Avalanche. He opened up the scoring on the year. He got 8 assists for 9 points, was a 5 on the plus minus, and had 42 penalty minutes. And finally, for the re-signings for this offseason, I have Nico Sturm re-signing, maybe a 1 to 2 year deal worth same thing as Aube-Kubel, 1 to 1.25 million per year. And in 74 games played with us in the Wild, he had 9 goals, 11 assists for 20 points, was a -7 on the plus minus, and had 14 minutes worth of penalties. And same thing, I think he's a solid bottom 6 forward who, you can maybe not an every night type of guy, but he can come in and play when other players need a rest. So kind of a guy who could bounce in and out of the lineup for the Avalanche. And then next, I have us signing Nathan MacKinnon to an extension. Obviously, he's going to be a free agent next offseason, so I would prefer not to risk him testing free agency, which I don't think he will. I think he likes being in Colorado, but I have us just signing him to an extension now, so he plays this upcoming season on his final deal for this year, but then you already have the extension tacked on for next season, for the next upcoming season, so that he's on the team and he doesn't even have to worry about free agency. So I think that would be the move that I would make if I'm Joe Sakic. I've kind of heard some buzz that might happen, but obviously nothing's official until it happens and gets announced. But that's what I would do if I was Sakic. Maybe sign Byram to an extension, or maybe wait till next offseason because he will be an RFA, so we'll have to wait and see. But in 65 games played this season, of course, he missed some time with COVID and with injuries. He scored 32 goals, 56 assists for 88 points, was a 22 on the plus minus, and took 42 penalty minutes. Now, I have Avalanche free agent signings, although this should be Avalanche free agent signing because I only have us making one free agent signing, and that is going to be Vincent Trocheck of the Carolina Hurricanes. To me, I feel like Trocheck would be a solid candidate to replace Nazem Kadri at the second center. I don't think he'll get as much production with Trocheck as you got with Kadri, but he's still a very solid and viable option to play in that second center role. So to me, I have Trocheck being our second center. And in 81 games played, so he only missed one game last season, he scored 21 goals with 30 assists for 51 points, was a 21 on the plus minus, but he did take 78 penalty minutes, which you would like to see that number come down, but I like Trocheck as the possible replacement for Nazem Kadri if we don't re-sign him this offseason. Next up, here's my lineup projection. I mean, top line should be obvious. Gabriel Landeskog, the captain, Nathan MacKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen. One of, if not the best top line in hockey. So, I mean, this one was fairly obvious. I know Bednar switched it up in the playoffs to get different line looks, but to me, I think the top line will be back together this upcoming season. The second line, I have Artturi, Lehkonen, and Valeri, Nichushkin being the wingers on the second line, with Vincent Trocheck being that new second center for the Avalanche. And then on the third line, I have Oskar Olausson making the opening day lineup. Now, a lot of Avs fans may disagree with me, but when Oskar Olausson played in the preseason, he really impressed me. Then when he played with the Barrie Colts, he really impressed me. Same thing with the Oshawa Generals. He really, really impressed me this past season. I think he's NHL ready. I think he's ready to make the jump to the NHL level. I think he can be a solid future top six forward, but right now I have him playing as a middle six forward right now. And then on his line, Alex Newhook as the center and JT Compher as the other winger. And then on the bottom line, I have Nicolas, Aube-Kubel, Nico, Sturm, and I finally have 2018 first-round pick Martin Kaut making the jump to the NHL level. Now, if for say we don't re-sign Nico, Sturm, or Nicolas Aube-Kubel, and we only choose to re-sign one of them, I would probably say that Sampo Ranta comes in and fills one of those spots, but you know, you can't really, I mean, obviously it's my prediction, and I have us re-signing Aube-Kubel or Nico Sturm, but if we don't have enough cap space to sign one of the two, I would say whichever one of those two that we do re-sign, I'd place them at center, Kaut still at the right wing, and then at the left wing, I would have Sampo Ranta plug in there. So that's what I would do if we can't re-sign one of the two. Now looking at the defensive pairing, I mean, Devon Toews, Cale Makar, I mean, pretty easy for the first defensive pairing. Second defensive pairing, Sam Girard is coming back, so I have us pairing him with Josh Manson, who I do have us re-signing. And then as the third defensive pairing, I have Bowen Byram and Erik Johnson as the third defensive pairing, and that's who I have the defensemen being for the main part of the season next year. Goaltenders, we talked about it, Darcy, Kuemper, Pavel, Francouz, and third string, and you know, he needs to come in and replace, say, Darcy gets hurt, Francouz comes in as the starter, and Annunen comes in as the backup, or Francouz gets hurt, Annunen still comes in as the backup. So Justus Annunen, our top goaltending prospect, I think he'll jump to the league here soon, but we'll have to see. It all depends on what happens with Darcy Kuemper. If we if we re-sign him, he's going to play with the Eagles and will be called up if we need another goaltender. If not, I do think he'll be the backup this upcoming season. So only time will tell, and we'll have to see what happens this offseason with the goaltender carousel. Next is my mock draft for this upcoming NHL draft. Of course, we don't have a first-round pick who we traded to Arizona for Darcy Kuemper. We don't have our second-round pick who we traded to the Islanders for Devon Toews. So I believe we have a third-round pick, a fifth-round pick, a sixth-round pick, and a seventh-round pick. So we only have 4 picks this upcoming draft without obviously making trades. So who do I have as selecting? Well, in the third round, 97th overall, I have us selecting Jordan Dumais, a right winger off of the Halifax Mooseheads, and we love selecting from the Halifax Mooseheads. Of course, Nathan MacKinnon came from there. Justin Barron, who he traded away, came from there. So I do think we like selecting Halifax Mooseheads players. Now, the thing about Jordan Dumais is he's going to be a boomer bust prospect because he is undersized and a smaller forward. But, you know, Cole Caulfield was kind of the same thing, and he's panned out fairly well for the Montreal Canadiens. So I have us selecting Jordan Dumais at 97. I've seen a bunch of people rank him from, the late second round to the fourth round. So he could go anywhere. So if he's there at 97, I think Joe Sakic should take the flyer and take Dumais out of Halifax. In the 68 games played, he scored 39 goals, 70 assists for 109 points, was a 7 on the plus minus, and only took 6 penalty minutes for the Halifax Mooseheads. With the fifth round, I have us selecting Gibson Homer, goaltender out of the Chicago Steel. He's committed to Arizona State, so he'll get some development in college. And in 33 games played, he had a .316 goals against average, an .890 save percentage, and no shutouts. So he does need some development, but to me, this is a move to help our farm system out for the long run. Potentially could play in the NHL, but right now we have, obviously, I have us re-signing Kuemper. Francouz is re-signed to a 2-year deal. We have Annunen, and say we don't sign Kuemper and Francouz is the goaltender 1, and then you got Annunen as the backup. Then you have Hunter Miska, and then eventually Gibson Homer could come and help out with the Colorado Eagles. So I do like us getting another goaltender prospect. I think we need another goaltender prospect in the system. So I have Gibson Homer out of Chicago coming to the Avalanche. In the sixth round, I have Ryder Thompson out of the Portland Winterhawks coming to the squad. He's more of a defensive defenseman, I would say. In 58 games, only scoring 1 goal, 17 assists for 18 points. He has a 34 plus minus and has 10 penalty minutes. And with us, obviously, shipping off Darren to Montreal for Lehkonen, shipping off Helm to Anaheim for Josh Manson, and Sean Barron's being our top defensive prospect, I would like to add another defensive prospect into the farm system, and Ryder Thompson out of the Portland Winterhawks is the pick here. And then moving on to the 7th round, I have us selecting another Halifax Moosehead in James Swan, a centerman, and in 56 games played, he scored 10 goals, 11 assists with 21 points. He's a -6 on the plus minus and had 21 penalty minutes. And as I said, I think the Avs love selecting from the Halifax Mooseheads. Anyway, let me know what you thought of my offseason plan. I'm sure yours is probably completely different than mine, and that's fine. Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.